habit of deleting an episode when I'm some few minutes or few seconds into the recording when I realize that I've articulated a word wrongly or I have poor grammar. And you can recall in the previous episode that we talked about perfectionism as an hindrance to starting something that you want to do, or rather to progressing also. It's an hindrance. And it's something that I'm trying to work on, because I'm actually trying to make sure that every episode that I make, the wordings are correct, the grammar is fine, the English, the language being used is just flowing, it's fluent, but that's not the case. And I've also come to a realization that you guys out there are not perfect, and neither am I. So I'm going to try my best to not let that affect the production and to not let that affect the quality of the podcast in itself. Yeah, we are humans, we make mistakes. I'm actually speaking to myself when I say this. So don't let perfectionism be an hindrance to making progress. I'm actually saying this because this is the 5th or 6th time that I'm starting this recording after periodically deleting it when I use a wrong wording or a wrong grammar. But English will come na meli manze. As long as we are communicating, as long as you are understanding what I'm doing. And actually one of the main reasons why I started this podcast was to help myself to be able to articulate my thoughts properly, to be able to speak my ideas to a group of people and for them to understand what it is that I'm talking. Communication is key. So the fact that I'm struggling at the start, this is our 4th episode. Or is it the 3rd one? I'll check. The fact that I'm struggling at this point in time, that means there's a lot of room for improvement. So don't mind the errors. Don't mind me. Just listen to the ideas and take action. Right. So, yellow. Welcome back to another episode of Unspoken Reality Podcast. And in this podcast, it is our dream, it's our ambition, it's our aspiration, it's our goal, it's our aim to inspire you as the Kenyan youth to take action to change the status quo. We are living in a situation whereby we all know and we all understand that things can be better than they are right now. And one of the main reasons why they are not is because of poor governance. Not only in our country, but worldwide, poor governance, lack of leaders. They say politicians are not leaders, and I, one way or the other, agree with that sentiment. And majorly it's because of that. Everything rises and falls on leadership, as John Maxwell says. So it's incumbent upon us to change the status quo. Let's change the situation that you are currently living in. And let's change it to what we aspire and what we need it to be, not only for our own betterment, but for the betterment of the society at large. You can only do that at this point in time as a youth by ensuring that you have expanded your horizons. And how do you do that? You expand your horizons by reading, read intensively, read a lot of books, understand how the world works, how the world operates, understand leadership, understand money, understand communication. Be a good communicator. You should be able to communicate your ideas effectively. And not only to communicate them, but you should also be able to be in that position to make people agree with your idea. Learn sales, learn marketing, learn all this. And with that, you'll be in that position whereby you can change the situation. So, yeah, last week or 2 weeks ago, nilienda withdraw 30 bob. Nafikiri nataka kusema 30,000. It's 30 shillings. I am still a comrade. Don't ask me nilikuwa na withdraw 30 nifanye nini, huwezi elewa bana, weachana tu. So bana, withdraw 30 shillings and the transaction cost is 11 bob for 30 shillings. That was 2 weeks ago. Sija withdraw kitu so sijui ka imechange since then, and actually I did not withdraw that 30 shillings, imebaki tu hapa kwa simu. It's the richest that I have on this earth, 30 bob. Yes. So yeah, we are living in a tough economical times worldwide and also in our country. Prices are hiking. Basic commodities, hey, people cannot even afford. And I'm really grateful when I can be able to take food, when I can be able to have a roof above my head and clothes to wear. We really need to be grateful for such. And not only being grateful, we also need to work towards changing the situation. Yeah, so that's what's up. This episode is going to be a very short one. I hope. I hope it will be a short episode. I wanted to record a different one than the title that I've indicated, but then I realized that what I was to record is very in-depth, it's very deep. And if I just record it out of the blue, then I won't be doing you a service to articulating the ideas correctly and to making you understand the situation as it is. So I opted to do another one called When Life Happens. And so my thought process has not really been arranged correctly. I'll just be giving it to you, the ideas that are forming in my head and some few of what I've written down. So yeah, what do you do when life happens? This one can be twofold, by the way. Either you can have things happening to you in such a way that you had not anticipated, in the good, in the positive, affirmative direction, or it can also be the downright opposite. Things happening negatively, you can call it bad luck. You had not anticipated such. What do you do when that happens? So that's our focus for this short episode. I remember back in high school, this can be the case to all students joining Form 1. You really aspire to get an A of 84. Perhaps it's because what your parents want you to get, your society, your teachers from primary, or even you yourself, because you're starting a journey of 4 years and you're at the beginning. So why not view the zenith of it? Why not aspire to be the best that can be achieved under that duration of time? And so that's the goal, that's the purpose of every student joining Form 1. I want to get an A of 84. And that was me. That was me back then. I will study hard. I will put in the work, waking up very early in the morning, doing assignments, doing homeworks. And I lived and breathed an A of 84. I was very certain during the last 3 months before KCSE that I was going to get that grade. Needless to say that that didn't happen. And we need to understand that sometimes things just don't go as planned. I really wanted an A of 84, but that's not the grade that I got. Sikuambi kenye nilipata. I know that's what you're waiting. No, I'm not telling you. You will know eventually. At the moment, mind your business. But I got a good grade. I can't complain because it has taken me to where I am currently in life, and so far so good. Another case scenario will be you're betting. I don't advocate for such, but it's a good case in point. You're betting with the money that was intended for a different purpose, maybe school fees, maybe food, which should not be the case. Be very mindful of that. And when you do that, you start praying, hey God, bana, make this happen. Acha ni mega jackpot ama ni nini. Those jackpots and those too few coins, you're now praying to get. But it just doesn't happen like that. And when it doesn't, you start blaming God. Hey manze, si nilikuomba. Kwani kukaendaje? And we need to understand that most times we have our innate desires, the human nature. And most times in our prayers, we want to impose it upon God. We want to impose upon it our will and our fleshly desires. But when it doesn't happen as we had prayed, we start blaming him and say it's your fault. Life doesn't happen that way. Be very mindful of what it is that you do. So, progressing on, we normally have these desires that at a certain age, I'm going to have this by 25. CG, I'll be working with a six-figure salary. By 30, I want to retire with this amount of money in my bank account, and then I have that opportunity to travel the world. Then inafika hiyo 30 ama hata 25, you don't have a job. You're just a recent graduate and you're still tamaking. And then you wonder, hey, all these aspirations that I had, am I really in that position to achieve them? Things are just not going according to plan. So what do you do? One, I want you to understand that there's something we call the circle of control. There are two things that circumnavigate around the human existence. Circumnavigate. Let me write that down as I tumia kisungu pali kwingine. So these two things are things that are in your control and things that aren't. Black and white, simply put. And it's upon you when life happens to you, when you're in a certain circumstance or in a certain situation, it's upon you to categorize and understand what has happened. Is it in my control? Can I change the outcome? Do I have a hand in it? Or is it not? If it's not, don't stress about it. Don't stress. But also, mind you, before we delve deep into things happening to us in life, we need to understand that some of the things are as a result of the consequences of our actions. Right? As JP puts it, you cannot snap or you cannot twist the fabric of reality and do not expect it to snap back in its original position. So sometimes we make actions, we do things that later down the line they give us a certain consequence that we did not anticipate, and in one way or the other it set us back. And out of this, you can say that life at most times reflects to us who we are. We do things based on our nature. We do things based on our personality and our identity. What values and principles do you have? And in one way or the other, it affects the outcomes of the things down the road. As they say, you reap what you sow. But just to cut the long story short, as I had said earlier, I don't intend this episode to be very long. There are two things that you can do when life happens. Let's say you've lost the investment that you had made in millions or in thousands or in hundreds of shillings. And now you're forced to start again, to start over from scratch. Most people will be depressed. You'll be wondering, why is it happening to you? And then you'll not have a step to make after that, a comeback, they say. But it's very much possible to make a comeback as long as you have life in your lungs, you have a breath in your lungs. It's possible to make a comeback. Right, so focus on these two things. One, it's reflect. Have a moment of pause, momentarily pause. Take some time off and just reflect on what it is that has happened. Have an entire grasp of the entire circumstance. What caused it? Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen in the way that they did? Is it as a result of something that I had done before, or is it just life happening? If it's something that happened to you positively, then you should be really careful. Let's say you've gotten a promotion in your job, in your career. Let's say you've won the lottery, or just something positively of great magnitude happening to you. That's a very best time to take a pause and reflect. Because if you just continue, you might really disregard the role that people had to play in you achieving that accolade that you have at the moment. This is one of the laws by the way of human nature by Robert Greene. It's called the law of grandiosity, whereby by nature human beings are grandiose. We normally think that we can achieve great things on our own. When something comes up, you're like, yes, I can do this, without even considering the magnitude of it in itself. And once you achieve a greater accolade, you forget the role that people played, not only you, but people, to achieve that what that you have at the moment. That's why it's very important to reflect at this point and to come back down. Yes, it's good to have that ego inflation slightly, that I was able to achieve this, patting yourself on the back. But be very cautious of the role that people also played for you to achieve this. You reflect when you achieve something positively, and you reflect when something negative happens to you. Don't forget the also role that luck played in you achieving that accolade. And if it's negative, just reflect and try to understand why it happened in the way that it did. And once you have done the reflection, the second thing is you do a forecast. Try to look into the future, visualize what is the next best step. What should I do after this? Where do I go from here? You've lost all money, maybe you've lost a family, a loved one, you've lost a relative, somebody that was very influential in your life, influential, right? Yeah, influential. Somebody that was there for you, and then you lose this person. Where do you go from here? It's a moment to reflect, and it's a moment to forecast. What is the next best step for me to do? Should I wallow in sadness? Or should I move on with life? Once you've done these two things, you've done a forecast, you've been able to understand the circumstance in its entirety, and you've reflected, you'll be able to move from that situation. Mind you of these two things. When you're anxious, anxiety comes from not having the knowledge of the future, what it holds. And this one, the mind plays tricks on you. You start curating ideas, thoughts of things that could be, and out of that you get anxious. So when you're anxious about the next step, when you're anxious about the future, stop. That's the best step, to stop. And that's the best place to reflect on the situation as it is. And the other thing will be to move when you're depressed. Depression comes in a state of hopelessness where you're like, the future is not even luminous. I'm not going to get a good thing out of this. In simple terms, I know depression is complex in all its entirety, but once you reach that situation, it's better for you to be on the move. Focus. The future is going to be great. Focus on all these good scenarios and try to move. Try to engage physically. Engage your body physically. Engage your mind mentally. Read books. Try to understand such different scenarios. And lastly, when life happens, come back to what matters. If you've lost everything, come back to what matters. They say identity, your identity, is what remains when everything that can be taken away from you is taken away from you. So what remains is your identity, and that's what matters. Life matters. Health matters. Friends and family matters. So sit back and reflect on all this. What blessing has life accorded to you? More often, people out there are under a different circumstances than what you're facing at the moment. And it's upon you to be grateful to what life has offered you up to this point, even though you have lost something, even though you've missed out on an opportunity. It's upon you to be grateful to those that you already have at the moment. Right. So that's the episode for today. What you do when life happens. Take note. Reflect. Focus. When you're anxious, stop. When you're depressed, move. Focus on what matters when life happens. Right, so this has been our episode for this week. I hope to see you again or hear from you in our next episode. Tune in. You can also find this episode on Spotify for those that are listening in YouTube. In the link below, I'll provide the link below, and you can also reach out to us through our email, unspokenreality.ke@gmail.com. Write to us, let us know what is happening, what you think about the episode, or what you think about the circumstance of the Kenyan youth at the moment. Right, so I wish you a blessed week. I wish you success in all your endeavors. And until we meet again in the next episode, Shalom.